Good evening, and welcome back to the channel. Again, we are here to do the weird and the wonderful with me, Strange Bones. And as before, we are wandering around the world looking for lore and information on things paranormal and supernatural. And tonight, we have another country to review. A country with a number of interesting, strange ghosts and, of course, many strange cryptids. And the country for today is none other than Ethiopia. Now, what can we say about Ethiopia? In terms of countries of Africa, Ethiopia is a fascinating one that throughout history has had culture and advanced learning, and amazing people with skills that are second to none. The silversmiths of Ethiopia are renowned for amazing and beautiful works. It is a country that perhaps we can say is practically entirely unique in its architecture, in that instead of building up in their amazing churches and buildings, they cut down into the rock, making buildings that were quite literally a single stone carved. Obviously, Ethiopia is a very hot and dry country, and so far cooler to go down than to build up. They are an amazing and interesting culture with more than 80 different tribes and languages and things going on for them. And they are a fascinating people in a land that is, I would say, an amazing place to visit. They have stood the test of time, being a kingdom that really and truly has held off invaders for centuries, despite its own internal troubles, in many, many ways. And I think perhaps has some of the most incredible history. And of course, mixed in with all of that, we have to admit that there's going to be a great deal of mythology that we can explore as well. So join me tonight, because tonight, we are going to look at the ghosts and cryptids of Ethiopia, and we shall see what we can find. Now, where shall we begin? We shall begin with the ghosts, as we typically do. Now, we need to give a small prefix, as it were, because obviously the Ethiopian view of things has a specific idea of what ghosts and cryptids might be. And in Ethiopian folklore, ghosts and spirits are generally referred to as Zar, which is possibly a ghost, possibly a demon, possibly a spirit. And they are said to be able to possess people, cause illnesses, etc. And a proper religious healer is required to treat such possessions. Some Ethiopians believe in benevolent, protective spirits, the Adbar, Um, but there is also the dukak, which is a word that is also meaning depression, used to describe a spirit that is believed to cause sleep paralysis and hallucinations, especially in those who recently have quit chewing khat. Khat, of course, is a particular drug that is popular in Ethiopia and it is chewed. So, where we are going to find some interesting connections, of course, is that some of the Zar are associated with jinn. And of course, jinn is one of our middle kind of spirits that fits between um, cryptids and ghosts, which I think is going to prove an interesting a view of things. Now, the Zar or Zairan can refer to societies of spirits in a parallel world um, with different ethnic groups, and there hasn't been a lot of examination into what it all is, largely because it's just considered to be a lived reality, a general thing that Ethiopians live alongside. So let us begin with some of the strange and interesting things. Um, we need to consider the the history, shall we say, where there are a number of quite serious wars and such that have occurred, and Ethiopia was considered to be quite anti-colonial for some time after, well, attempts to colonize it that were severely rebuffed. Um, and of course, the Italo-Ethiopian War in 1896 reached its dramatic climax in Adwa, a decisive battle that secured Ethiopia's independence. And battles, as we know, are a wonderful and fertile ground um, for the formation, such as it were, of ghosts. So we can look forward to a great deal of that kind of thing, if you will. Um, Alongside all of that, we can add the fact that in Ethiopian mythology, we have a number of um, associated cryptids which may or may not be quite quite important. But let's see how we can begin. And we have managed to cause our notes to explode, but we shall fix that quickly. There we go. So we are going to start our goes. Hey there, Staraki. Welcome, welcome. Um, with the laughing caverns of Sof Omar. Um, as we've said that in Ethiopia, building up is not their thing so much as the digging down. And deep beneath the earth, the Sof Omar caves are an ancient dug out place that perhaps in past times were the safe homes for people, but they are very, very ancient, and they are a strange, winding set of tunnels and caves that absolutely are creepy in and of themselves, where you could get lost in the darkened places. But legends say that if you are down there, you can hear the laughter of something, neither human nor animal, that something lives within the tunnels deep in the earth. And if you go down, you can hear the echoes around you. But the question, of course, is raised, would you ever dare to laugh back? What kind of ghost or cryptid might laugh at your explorings in the shadowed places? Another interesting place is found within the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela. And these are absolutely a marvel of ancient architecture. Whole buildings cut from the rock instead of being built. So instead of putting up stones and brick and mortar, they cut into the rock going down. And a number of churches were made like this, and they are truly an absolute marvel of architecture and innovation. Something that is way beyond what many cultures ever achieved, which I think shows the advancement and impressive nature of the Ethiopian society. But the interesting thing is that the shadows cast within the walls of these churches often does not correspond to the shadows that ought to be cast by the sun traveling overhead. And visitors to these churches have reported glimpses of figures in robes moving silently through the stone corridors, as if the builders themselves still oversee their creation, or perhaps ancient priests still walk the halls. Who's to say what is down there but a shadowy world that lies just alongside ours and sometimes can be seen despite what you might think? Another rather interesting place is found in Gondar, and here is one of those interesting places where a number of castles were built. Unlike the cut rock churches, these are built castles, and rather nice ones, quite beautiful in many ways, wonderful architecture. But in the royal enclosure of Gondar, phantoms of past emperors of Ethiopia are rumored to roam at night, ghostly figures in ethereal robes guarding the fallen empire against the tides of time. People that have never left the country that they once ruled and remain there to keep over and perhaps protect. Hey, Marikota, welcome, welcome. Another rather interesting one, which we have encountered in other countries, in the mountains of Africa, very often it seems wind spirits are seen. Now, in Cote d'Ivoire, of course, we had the water spirits in the mountains, but in Ethiopia, dry as it is, we have not the water spirits, but the spirits of the wind. And if you go to the Simeon Mountains, voices from another time, speaking in languages none can understand, but nevertheless are notable as languages. You can hear the spirits of ancient warriors, though some say that in fact it is either aliens or the jinn trying to make contact. But in the mountains, whatever you might think they are, nevertheless, something speaks, and you can hear the voices on the wind. Now, another rather interesting place is the walled city of Harar. It's largely ruins these days, a fascinating archaeological place to visit, of course, very old. But what is really interesting is that the villages that are there are only there during the day. According to people that live around, you will see people just as villagers living around the place during the day. But when the sun sets, they disappear and cannot be found, and they only reappear again with the sunrise. Are they jinn that can slide away into an alternate world? Are they ghosts that only haunt during the day? Or are they something else? Apparently, nobody can or will tell you. Another fascinating thing with echoes, culture-wise, going across to Egypt, in Ethiopia as well, are obelisks, huge pillars of stone that once served some cultural or religious reason, perhaps. And the obelisks of Aksum stand tall and proud in the moonlight, and it is said that if you want to meet with the spiritual, the paranormal, or perhaps the intergalactic or extraterrestrial, this is where you need to go, because for some reason these places at night form a link or a connection, and you can see strange beings or ghostly figures there, and perhaps even interact with them. What this might mean or what these things might be is never told, but it is said that they hold power and perhaps even something more. Now, a very interesting uh, thing which is perhaps ghostly, perhaps not, but is entirely not human, is the disappearing lakes of the Rift Valley. It is a strange thing that has very much baffled geologists and more, where there are lakes which simply disappear at times, bodies of water that appear and disappear with no real reason behind it. When they are there, they are full of animals, and when they are not, the animals are forced to go somewhere else. Um, Locals that live in the area say that it is a supernatural force that makes them appear and disappear, and that it is hard to explain by any means what it is that cause these strange lakes to come and go as they please, but it is the will of things beyond that makes it so. Now, another thing which I find fascinating, which is connected to both ghosts and to aliens, um, is found in the Bale Mountains, where, for reasons unexplained, you get lights that appear dancing across the sky. Scientists, of course, say it's an atmospheric phenomena, but how does one explain that properly? And it seems that they are not quite able to explain exactly the cause, but nevertheless, strange and mysterious lights appear across the sky, wreathing the landscape and giving a mysterious and magical effect. I don't know what that might be, but perhaps if anyone can give an opinion or a comment, send it up in the comment sections and let us know. But it is said to be both haunting and beautiful. Another interesting thing is found in Addis Ababa. And Addis Ababa, of course, is an amazing, modern, vibrant city with all kinds of interesting modern conveniences and more, and skyscrapers, busy streets, and all the things that you would typically expect for a modern city. But there are also there in Addis Ababa hidden valleys, strange alleyways that are sometimes there and sometimes not so much. Time doesn't seem to work the same way along the alleys between the streets. Passageways between time and space, watches stop working, and technology fails without any explanation, as if within the city there's the ordinary places you can go, and yet there are bits that belong to other times and places where perhaps you shouldn't go. Perhaps other times, perhaps you can step through to the world alongside ours where the jinn live. Who knows? Or perhaps it is ghost streets that will lead you back in time to when the ghosts were real and you are no more than a ghost. Who's to say? But if you ever want a chance to step between time and space, it seems that Addis Ababa is the place to go. Now, if you travel out into the Danakil Desert, you will find that it is what scientists and geologists refer to as a true desert. Now, as we know, you get quite a lot of different kinds of deserts, and some of them have far more greenery than you might think. The scientific view of what makes a desert is a little broader, and we have quite a lot of different types. Hey, Shimane, welcome, welcome. Good to see you here. You get different types of deserts all over Africa, but this particular one is what they call a true desert, which is to say immensely dry and almost entirely devoid of life. And in such a place, of course, the slightest amount of water that you can get your hands on absolutely would be most vital. And in this particular unforgiving expanse, there is a particular well, an enigmatic abyss from which mournful wails emerge that pierce the oppressive silence of the desert, strange cries howling out from somewhere under the earth. And the origin of these haunting sounds obviously is the subject of a great deal of speculation and intrigue and great deal of mystery. Some say they are the cries of tormented spirits. Others say that perhaps it is a gateway to hell itself, and the cries of the damned can be heard. Others say that those who dare try to cross this desolate landscape that have died get swallowed up beneath the stony sands and are trapped beneath in this well, and their untimely death has left them crying out. How true that might be, I suppose, none will ever tell. Or maybe they will. perhaps you should go and ask. Now, Ethiopia is, of course, a fascinating land that goes all the way up Africa and all the way down, making every bit of it different and interesting. There are places in it that are quite fertile and wonderful, and places so desolate that living there is virtually impossible. And such diversity brings you a land that can straddle the separation between the seen and the unseen, the known and the unknown. So, whichever kind of strangeness you're looking for, it's absolutely a country worthwhile examining. Now, another place that we are going to have a brief look at, which maybe perhaps is worth a visit if you're interested in finding the strange and the mysterious, is the town of Dalol, which is right in the north of Ethiopia, located in Kilbet Rasu, in the Afar region, in the Afar Depression. And it is a very dry and difficult place to find. It is the highest average temperature for an inhabited location on Earth, with an average annual temperature of up to 35 degrees centigrade, which is pretty high for the average year over. You can only get to it by off-road vehicles or camel. And it is very, very interesting as a place in and of itself. It is known for its production of potash, which stopped after World War One, and it has sort of become a forgotten town, a dead town that really no longer is inhabited much at all. And given that the hottest temperature is around 49 degrees centigrade, which is quite enough to cook you. It's not a place easy to live in, and given the lack of water, obviously makes it very, very difficult to manage. But it is said that given that it is no longer lived in, it has become a ghost town, and legends hold that it is not merely a ghost town in the sense of being abandoned, but that it is very much still lived in by those who worked so hard to make something of the place back in the day and possibly died there. Who's to say? But if you do try to go there, there is a fair chance, of course, that you might not come back. So perhaps you should be careful of visiting such a place. Now, Ethiopia, of course, while it has a great deal of history and such, and is very, very rich in folklore, in general, it is specific in its viewpoints of what makes cryptids as such, and it's hard to pin it down. It doesn't have a strong focus on the supernatural in a direct way, simply that they are things, they are there, live with it. So rather than in many other cultures where such things are considered to be an interesting sort of a quirky story. Hey there, Johandra. Um, Here they are just simply what they are. So they do have a number of strange things that are very much real, such as the Ethiopian wolf, which is found nowhere else in the world. Um, but they do, of course, have a lot of strange spirits, more than the physical cryptid, shall we say. They don't speak much of things like Bigfoot or Nessie type cryptids, but very much about the spiritual and the supernatural. So it seems that spirits are more important than any physical thing. And Ethiopian myths often involve the gods and spirits that interrupt and have uh, an interest in dealing with, if you will, um, the human world. So, what can we speak of in terms of these? The first that we shall have a quick look at, um, which perhaps is partly a cryptid, partly not a cryptid. I don't know. Um, but nevertheless, just for the interest and the strangeness of it, is what they call the Abasambo. I hope I've said that correctly. Some of them are hard to say, and it is a felid, or which uh, we can refer to as of the cat family. It is a spotted lion, which was said to exist by all the locals, but which everybody said at least could not exist and did not exist until, um, for whatever reason, somebody went out and actually found it, which of course put the scientists a bit back. It seems to be a cross between a lion and a leopard, and it may be a fallback. Hey there, Leon Buerta. A fallback from an older form of animal that no longer exists anywhere except here. Um, he was found, if you will, simply by the fact it found the scientists who was out there looking for things when it dug through the hole of the hut he was in, seized a young boy and tried to make off with it. And sadly, the young boy that was caught died a little while afterwards, which was quite sad. But absolutely, it was not leopard nor cheetah, um, but an entirely different species. So it seems that there are indeed strange cryptids that are very real. Now, another such interesting one, which may or may not be real, is the Persepolis beast, which seems a strange creature that was spoken of by other countries as being seen in Ethiopia, and it appears to be a kind of giraffe, but not. A creature that now no longer exists even in Ethiopia, but nevertheless, something strange and interesting, proving that this is absolutely an odd land. We also have the Kouropithekos, as the Greeks referred to it, the pig-faced baboon, a very strange baboon with a pig-like face, which may have been at some stage related to the Hamadryas or the Chakma, but even in that is not known for certain. It's certainly an older variety of creature that no longer exists anywhere in the world, and some say is still seen even today in the lost and wild places of Ethiopia. Now, to add to these strange cryptids were remains that were found um, by the Rothschilds that was some kind of weird tusk that comes from no known animal at all, anywhere, ever, which perhaps is one of the strangest of things. It is large, it is fluted. It was found by Maurice de Rothschild and the French zoologist Henri Neuville. And they found it for sale in Addis Ababa, which at the time was called Abyssinia, now Ethiopia. And they were on a zoological expedition. And obviously, at the time, sale of ivory was commonplace and very much allowed. And they purchased this thing, but it just does not fit to any kind of animal known. It's got narrow longitudinal grooves along one side and a single broader groove on the opposite side, making it seem to be like some kind of giant tooth more than a tusk even, though obviously, yes, tusks are a version of tooth that is grown differently through evolution, but nevertheless, they could not explain what it was or where it came from, and to this day it is considered to be of an unknown animal. So it seems that there are beasts that, at least at the time, were in Ethiopia that nobody can explain, which I think is rather awesome. Another fascinating one, which no longer seems to exist, but has been reported not only in Ethiopia, but Sudan, Kenya, and Somalia, is the Ethiopian deer, another strange thing that is found in many artworks as well, but simply cannot be found anymore. But remains have been discovered showing that a odd deer creature did live in Ethiopia. Now, for those of us who don't know, I did not, I had to look it up. You don't get deer in Africa. We get our version thereof, we get buck, but they are not deer as such. And the only kind of deer that comes close is found right up in Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, in the Atlas Mountains. So no other deer at all. But in Ethiopia, there are a whole collection of deer fossils showing that at one time there were deer, and now we don't know why they died out or what happened or where they went. Why this should be, we don't know. Perhaps simply the changing climates over the centuries of Africa made it no longer possible for deer, and so we get buck instead. But nevertheless, such things, they exist. Now, one true cryptid, which absolutely is important, and of course, which we know about from Egypt, but apparently originated in Ethiopia, is in fact the Sphinx. Now, as we know, the Sphinx is a human-headed cat creature, um, which, at least in Egyptian mythology, speaks of there being riddles or it eats you. And of course, we know that there are statues by the Great Pyramids, but apparently it is in Ethiopia that they originally uh, were said to live in and indeed be in the wilds thereof. How true that is, I couldn't tell you, but certainly it is a land, I think, that would fit to where you would expect a sphinx to live. Um, they have more than one variety of cryptid cat, however. The Tigris de Montagne, of course, is another one that is not only in Ethiopia but also in Chad and the Central African Republic and South Sudan, which um, is a kind of saber-toothed tiger, much larger than lions and such, and possibly, thankfully, now have died out. And they may be the last remnants, such as it is, of the original saber-toothed tigers that were known in Africa, but now, thankfully, are gone. Nevertheless, they have been known to exist within Ethiopia. In the other countries where it's a lot more wet, they are called water lions. But of course, in Ethiopia, you don't quite have that many um, wet places, being hotter and drier for the most part. So perhaps we would have to give them a different name entirely, but nevertheless, saber-toothed tigers were said to roam, and according to the stories, not as long ago as you might think. Now, an interesting one for us because we don't often encounter such creatures quite as traditional, as it were, to the usual trope, is the Ethiopian vampire bat, also referred to as the devil bird. It's a blood drinking bat with a wingspan of up to um, 15 inches or about 40 centimeters, if you will, that lives in the Devil's Cave near Nekmete in the Welega division of Ethiopia. And in the 1930s, this was explored by one of the more famous naturalists, and a huge swarm of these bats was seen. And he noted that in the locale, the goat herds' flocks were not terribly big or very healthy, and the locals said it was these bats that would come out at night and drink the blood. And in fact, it seems that they had some kind of fungal parasite. So not only did they drink uh, the blood of both animals and people, but they would give a strange disease which um, may account for how they gained their uh, cryptid status, as while the actual bats were very, very real, the locals said, in fact, that they were also somewhat demonic and had supernatural powers. How true that might be um, is possibly a little harder to say, but nevertheless, uh, cryptid bats, if you will, and why not? So we have found some interesting ones to consider there, but let us return to the last of the um, strange and twisted, if you will, uh, before we go to the interesting one that I wanted to do a little more on just for this. Now, this next one is the Wa'ab, which is a cryptid, but a crypto hominid. Now, as we well know, going around the world, we have a whole collection of these. We have the Bigfoot, we have the Yeti, um, and so on and so forth. We also have the strange dwarf-like um, creatures of Cote d'Ivoire. We have the um, dwarf-like cryptids in South Africa. And yes, here too we have our half human, half cryptid creature like thing. And where it becomes interesting, it is most notable in that it has no joints um, in its legs, making its walk to be very stiff. And it is supposedly capable of speaking any human language. How true that is, we don't know, but there we go. Um, and people that have gone and tried to follow up on this story have said that uh, these creatures were quite common. And in fact, it was said that they were seen around, and it was even caught and eaten by certain people, which is a turnaround, let's face it, because normally it is them that do the eating. But nevertheless, um, it was said that they even tried to find out more, offering quite a huge reward for the time for anyone who could find one living or dead. They were short, some kind of Bigfoot-like thing, only goblinoid, um, resembling a human but shorter, with narrow humped shoulders and longer legs and shorter arms, but in keeping with our normal Bigfooty type things, covered with a thick fur or a coat of soft hair, but not on the face. Um, it was said to have very human-like features, um, but one of its toes is longer than the others. Um, it was said to sleep standing up, but absolutely could speak any language it wished. Now, in 1889, there was a fellow who said he had seen a dead one. Um, how true that is hard to say, as we have only got his word for it. It could possibly have been some kind of great ape, or perhaps uh, it could have been quite possibly one of our Bigfoot type cryptids. According to the gentleman who said that he saw it, it was dead. There were two men standing with it, and they had obviously hunted it. And he asked them, "What is that?" And they said it was a takitiab. Forgive me if I butcher this pronunciation. And they said it is a wa'ab. Now, the legends, of course, have been around for a while. Um, and basically, this guy said it was absolutely like seeing a shorter human with slightly longer legs, but hairy. Um, its hair was black, its face was grey, and he was told that they could be of all colours, like sheep or goats, and that the meat uh, was very good, but he said he did not care to try it. So who knows? Perhaps these things do exist. Perhaps they are out there. but we cannot necessarily tell. Now, also in the strange and twisted lines, we have a creature called a leucrota, which is related in cryptozoology, in case you're wondering, to the Kurokota. And what exactly it might be is described mostly by Pliny the Elder, who locates it in Ethiopia. It is as big as a wild donkey, with the cloven-hooved legs of a stag, which allows it to run swiftly. It has the neck, tail, and breast of a lion, the head of a badger, with a mouth slit all the way to the ears, and a single block of bone for teeth. And it is capable of imitating a human voice, which sounds truly terrifying. The leucrota is the offspring, according to Pliny, of a lion and a hyena, which seems very doubtful, but nevertheless, whether there is truly a difference between leucocrota and leucrota is hard to say, and it may have been an elision of words. It is also said to have existed at some time in India, though Indian mythology gives no comment in that regard that I could see. But it is said to be poisonous, which is a little bit concerning, and it can eat and digest anything. What exactly it might really be is very hard to say. So we are going to have to go along with that. Now, the crocotta, which is said to also be in both Ethiopia and India, is essentially a overlarged hyena. And it is thought perhaps that this is a fallback or a story development from the so-called dire hyenas, which I am led to understand is a very real thing, just as dire wolves are a very real thing, that they are the predecessors of modern wolves. This is the predecessor of the hyena, so very large, very nasty, and will absolutely eat you. And if you know anything about the normal hyena, you know how powerful it can actually be, which would absolutely make a dire version into something that you really, really would be better off avoiding. Thankfully, no longer exists. An interesting one is a creature called a Likimsa. This is a creature that appears at first go to be an elephant. However, on closer inspection, it's almost part humanoid, and it is notable in that it is a creature that eats humans if it can. Hey Lunga, hey Basi, welcome, welcome. So apparently it disguises itself as an elephant so that it can get near enough and therefore catch and eat using its trunk, which it does have, and swallow humans whole. Now, it's supposed to be bigger slightly than an elephant. It is said to actually have hands or paws in a certain way, rather than the normal elephant feet, and its mouth can open wider, so it is capable to swallow you whole. The next rather interesting one is the Ethiopian antlion. Now, what exactly that might be, because as we know, in South Africa, we absolutely have antlions, and they are very small, which is pretty cool. And they are very violent, even though they are small. But this one was said to be exceptionally large. So it appears to have been a large version of what we consider to be a antlion, described in varying ways rather badly by people in far off countries that didn't know what they were talking about. But nevertheless, this is one that is said to be big enough that it can trap even children in their cone shaped pits, drag them down, and chew them up, which I think would absolutely put me right off. As we know very well, the antlions that we get in this country, if you take a small piece of grass and tickle the side of the hole, it absolutely goes very angry, and attempts to grab on with its large pincers. So the idea of one big enough to eat even a goat or a child would absolutely put me right off. I don't know what more you can say about that. They have varying, interesting, dinosaur-like ogres. The Bulgu, of which they speak, is a fearsome ogre with 4 eyes, a head like an axe blade, stocky legs, and extremely tough skin, and they are all cannibalistic. And of course, they're used in folklore to frighten the children, which is, of course, a popular thing to do with mythology. MK Tali and Drawing Girl, welcome, welcome, welcome. It's good to have you along in our live. This seems to be something that is part dinosaur and part cryptid. And all we know is that this thing will run around where it can in the dark and eat whatever people it can. How true that is, I don't know, but definitely an odd one. The creatures that they speak of are very, very, very weird. And besides the one, which is the Bigfooty type creature, there are no real commonalities with other areas except for one. And I'm not sure where it comes from, because by and large, Ethiopia, for many, many centuries, has long been either the pre-modern religions or it's been Christian. And of course, the Ethiopian Christian church has a longer history than the Christian church in many European countries. So it's interesting to note that in their mythology, you get what is absolutely the jinn. And these jinn fit precisely to what we have discovered thus far with the jinn of other places, the shadow people, the strange creatures that are not considered spirits as such. They are not ghosts either, but rather they are another race that lives alongside humanity, but partly in a parallel dimension, if you will. creatures with the ability to pass unseen and sometimes with great magic. Hard to tell exactly what, but nevertheless, um, a strange and interesting fact that how they describe the jinn is exactly the way jinn are described in other cultures and places, and the way places that do not call them jinn but nevertheless refer to them as shadow people, the shadowy, shape shifting beings with burning eyes that appear and disappear, which may be very nice and may be quite kind, but in certain occasions can be truly awful and quite evil, just like people in that regard. So, what are they? What can we say about them? Uh, Nothing new, alas, but certainly it has re-established a number of the things that were said before about the jinn. So we have reaffirmed plenty of places where there are ghosts. There have been a number of wars up and down where plenty of ghosts are said to be, and that fits again to our ghosts. So we've reaffirmed our theories of ghosts thus far, which is great, uh, though we have not encountered much new on the ghost front. On the cryptid side, by and large, not a lot new, um, but certainly the reaffirmation of how the jinn are seen uh, definitely is a very, very interesting um, reality. And I suppose there aren't a great deal of cryptids that are very weird in that regard in Ethiopia, simply because the genuine animals that they have had are quite sufficiently um, weird enough in and of themselves. Animals which no longer exist in the world, but seem to have lasted in Ethiopia quite a lot longer than in other places. Now, just before we trot on to our last, um, one thing that we can add to our cryptid understanding um, as we go along is the interesting fact that the Ethiopian Sphinx is in fact winged. Now, I'm not sure if the Egyptian one is. I'd have to go back and double check on that. But the Ethiopian Sphinx absolutely is, which I find very interesting that it's an added uh, aspect, if you will, to the Sphinx as it is known. And it seems that the Sphinx in Greek mythology is also known to be winged. We will get to Greece at some stage in due time. Hey Zara, welcome, welcome, welcome. Um, but nevertheless, now we cannot leave Ethiopia in any manner or form without speaking of the last most important cryptid of all, which I think is one which is truly an African cryptid in a great many ways, and one which I'm very proud to say is ours. And that is, of course, the Buddha. Now, it's spoken of under many names in many places around Africa, but the Buddha, as it is known, is a name that comes from Ethiopia, from the Eritrean language, um, and from Ge'ez. And basically, it is a particular group of people. And in Ethiopia, very, very interestingly, it said that these are all metal workers. So any blacksmith is actually a Buddha. And what makes them special is the fact that they are weir hyenas. Now, where it gets really interesting is in European mythology, a werewolf is a man with the ability to turn into a wolf. That is a werewolf. However, the Buddha might quite possibly be hyenas who have the ability at times to turn into a man. Now, that's the other way around. Now, witchcraft, the evil eye, and such things are very much a belief that is widespread even till today in Ethiopia. And interestingly, within the metal worker castes, the majority were in fact Ethiopian Jews. So it has become associated, if you will, that both metal workers and Jews are in fact Buddha. It is so widespread in its belief that the Amharic word for a manual laborer, a worker, is tabib, which also means one with the evil eye, the one who has the power of witchcraft. So it shows how widely spread the beliefs are. Now, the Buddha, they fall into a really interesting sort of section of society in that iron workers are hugely important. They are a massively important part of society. The ability to forge metal, make tools that everybody needs, is greatly important in any society, of course. But in this regard, they want them, they need them, and they absolutely fear them. They have power over fire in a way that can only come from the devil, and have the ability to be both man or hyena. And the only way to protect yourself from these creatures that they nevertheless need is to have a special kind of amulet or talisman known as a kitab, which invokes off the name of God to ward away the ill effects of these people, which absolutely would have to be able to be approached and traded with. And in fact, there is even a group of people in the society known as the Debtera, which is an unordained priest or specialized layperson who practices traditional medicine and sorcery that can create these special amulets to protect you. The Ethiopian Orthodox priests of the Christian Church are also able to intervene and perform exorcisms on those that believe they are afflicted by not only demons but also the Buddha, and that is done within the church with praise and victory songs, scripture readings, and prayer, and confronting the afflicted person with the name of Jesus until the evil is brought out of them, and whatever the Buddha may have done is delivered from them. It is noted that sometimes the exorcism is not successful, and sometimes the spirit simply stays within. But yes, we have our weir hyenas, and they're an important element of African cryptozoology in that Ethiopia is by no means the only place that has them. We have encountered them in South Africa as well. So there is that link down to here. Um, so what do you think? Do you think, hey BD, do you think that any of these things are real? Do they exist? We seem to have a generalized consensus, such as it is, that absolutely ghosts are real, though whether they are good or bad is definitely something we can't easily establish straight away, um, because different stories give us different things. We absolutely have a number of different categories of ghosts that we've encountered thus far as we've gone around the world. Some of them proving to be quite harmless, if a little frightening, and some of them absolutely being dangerous and able to physically harm. The jinn are very varied, but they are living beings, another whole race alongside ours, which can be good or bad, just like people. But then on top of that, you also have the spirits, which are not celestial spirits, as we have established, but may be good or bad or just hungry. Um, Spirits of the air, spirits of the water. And then we have the actual celestial spirits, which you have either angels, which are absolutely good and no problem, or demons who are absolutely bad and should be avoided at all costs. So it seems we have a number of established categories of things that you may encounter of the supernatural or paranormal variety. It is most interesting, again, as we pointed out, that in countries where there are wolves, you get werewolves. And countries where we get lions and hyenas, you get were-lions and were-hyenas. And in the Polynesian islands, where there is more water than land, you get were-sharks. So it seems that even cryptids fit to the landscape, such as it were. But there are commonalities. Shape-shifting exists around the world, absolutely. Um, and demons, it seems, exist around the world, absolutely, whatever they may or may not be. Multiple religions, regardless of their cultural heritage or what their type is, tell you that there are such dangerous evil spirits and that there are good spirits like angels. Of course, the word angel comes from the Greek, meaning messenger, and it refers, of course, to them as a messenger of God. So they are naturally going to be the good ones. They have different names in different religions and cultures, but same, if different, if you will. But looking around, we have to say that um, we are fitting still to our major categories in the ghosts, that it is great trauma or violence that causes the existence, but not every time. And as we discovered, it is a question that we have not yet answered. Why is it that some become ghosts and some do not? And it seems to be, if we add up all of the data we have gathered thus far, it requires two things, and both are deeply emotional. First of all, something deeply emotional must happen to the person when they die. And secondly, the person doing the dying must be deeply emotionally invested in staying behind for some reason, be it great anger, great trauma, or even great love. That would cause them to not move on. So it seems that the formation of a ghost is an emotional thing. How true that is, we don't know. But nevertheless, so I hope you have enjoyed this thus far. I hope it has been instructive. And as we continue around with our lives, going around the world, we will do our best to find out more about um, the strange powers and spirits and things that we have in our world. Don't forget to like, don't forget to share the channel, subscribe to, and join in every time that you can. We do it every night except Sundays at around 10 o'clock, and you are absolutely welcome. And if you would like to, let me know, and I will add you on the live. Or you can just comment in the comments if you don't want to go live, and you can give your opinions and stories and let us know what interesting things there are, and if there is any particular country you would like seen next, let me know. Otherwise, I will pick an interesting one, hopefully as different as possible from the last done, to give us a bit of contrast and interest as we are going around the world, looking at all the different places. So do let me know. Tell me more, and yeah, join us each time. You are absolutely welcome to every one of the lives that we do. And until then, remember, have a great night, sleep well, but also sleep with one eye open. Keep a holy object nearby, just in case, because you never know what might go bump in the night.